Is one tight end coming off an injury immediately a must start for you in week 14? Which NFC West backfield is suddenly completely muddy this weekend? And which Buccaneers running backs, plural, can you trust for Sunday? Plus, we're answering all of your tough start-sit questions here as you are facing FFPC League Championship weekend. Let's get out there and win some titles. We've got a great show for you. Ferrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all of you Bulkaholics and Ferrelliacs. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. That is the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host tonight is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Ferrell Elliott. I will bring him on shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, want to remind everybody of a couple of things. Number one, get those waiver claims in by 10 a.m. Sunday morning because the waiver wire will lock for the remainder of the season in the FFPC. Get those teams in order. If you're playing in your, if you made your league playoffs in the Fantasy Pros Championship or the FFPC Main Event, you already have, you've been having the option to place these bids the last couple of weeks. For those of you who did not make it, you already have had the waiver wire taken away from you, but everybody loses it coming up on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. So get those bids in. And while you're meandering around myffpc.com, why not play the FFPC weekly challenge? There's no draft, there's no salary cap. Just choose 10 or 12 players if you want to play with kickers and defenses and watch them ride throughout the weekend's games. Remember, only one player per team. If you want Will Levis, you can't have Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. If you want Patrick Mahomes, you can't have DeAndre Hopkins, so on and so forth. Enter for as little as $35, win up to $2,500 in 10, 30, and 100 team contests as well. Play in the classic or the slim format. myffpc.com. myffpc.com is where to go for that. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified. So each and every time we go live, and I'll give you next week's schedule coming up after at the end of the show tonight. Anytime we go live, you'll know because you already have that notification bell selected and clicked, and you are ready to go. We are ready to go with our FFPC League Championship advice. We're going to be answering all your start-sits questions tonight. We're going to talk about Dalton Kincaid's prospects against the Rams and what could be a very fruitful fantasy football game. Whether the aforementioned Westbrook-Ikhine is going to pull another rabbit out of his hat and much more. I cannot do this by myself. I have to bring in the co-host with the most, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, one Ferrell Elliott. Ferrell, happy Friday to you and welcome in.
Buddy, it is so good to see you. I'm reviewing my contract. You said tonight's co-host, and I thought I had a yearly gig here, and now I'm beginning to wonder. Like all college football coaches right now, I'm beginning to try to read between the lines what's happening and understanding that I could be out based on my weeks 12, 13, and 14 performance. 12 and 13 in the FFPC. I may deserve to be out, but it's another conversation.
We don't often get breaking news on this program, but I'm just
we do all the time.
Yeah. Well, I do have some breaking news coming in right now. Apparently, the HSFF Hour has reached a long-term agreement with one Ferrell Elliott to be the long-term co-host for this show indefinitely. You have the golden contract, Ferrell. It's
till death do us part.
Till death do us part, basically. It's exciting because we kick off the KFFSC championship round this weekend. We did last night with the Packers and Lions. That is ongoing. And of course, FFPC League Championship weekend, everybody setting their sights on league titles. Scott Christian already popping in saying, good evening, Balky and Ferrell. It's fantasy football playoffs time. Let's go. It's the year of the pig. and Oinker would agree. It is indeed the year of the pig. We'll see what happens with that. Scott wants to know, or just giving greetings to Oinker here. He is enjoying his new home. I can tell you that right now, right, Oinker? Yeah, he is. So he's all good to go. Ferrell, the Packers were not good to go last night as they fell to the Detroit Lions in a really good game, 34-31. Tom Smith brings this up, and I think we should lead it off with this. Jaden Reed, big old zero last night. Not sure he can be trusted going forward for the next 3 weeks during championship run. I think I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like on this show, while we have said it's roulette playing, it's like playing roulette with Packers receivers each and every week. The one guy I think we usually counted on for at least minimal production, like double-digit production at a minimum, was Jaden Reed. And now, granted, he had the 2 touchdowns last week against Miami, but he only caught like 3 passes that game. This game, no points on 1 target. Ferrell, they weren't even scheming him into the game. Yeah, I think you have to look long and hard about starting Jaden Reed with, $1 million on the line here coming up in the FFPC.
I felt this about every Packer receiver this year. And, I've in drafting Packer receivers, I concentrated on Watson. I love the athlete, but I don't love the situation. This is the best ball crew. It's the best ball squad. It's a tip to the cap for what they've done with the wide receiver position on this team, because these are great football players that can contribute every week. I saw wonderful things for the Packers. I thought they went blow to blow with Detroit, and tremendous play and respect for Jordan Love last night, who kept plays going, threw the ball from all different type of angles. You saw the better part of his game, reminding you about what you like about the best games of Patrick Mahomes. So it's great to be in business with the Packers, but you've got too many players at the wide receivers. Let's concentrate on what the running back is doing. Because how wonderful was that?
Yeah, and that's the other frustrating thing for me as a Packers fan. Only 66 yards for Josh Jacobs. Now, maybe that's just the way the game was going. He had more yardage than Gibbs. He had more yardage than Montgomery on the ground. But I think part of the reason that Love has cleaned up his turnover problems over the last 4 weeks, where he hasn't turned the ball over, number one is health, and number two is this fantastic ground game that the Packers have. I was at the Dolphins game on Thanksgiving night, and I can't remember the last time I said that the Packers look like the more physical team, but they look like the more physical team against Miami. And I don't think they got out physical against Detroit, one of the most physical teams in the league as well. It's really weird that one guy in Josh Jacobs can really transform the mentality of an offense and the mentality of a team. He's
younger than what they had last year. He's bigger and plays with a lot more intent. We've talked about what the new, what the change of scenery has done for all the running backs in football this year. And it's been a very good thing. Detroit plays an interesting brand of football, to say the least. I heard today, and I think I heard this correctly, the 6 touchdowns they've scored against the Packers this year, 4 of them have been on 4th down. There's not a lot of coaches that are going to do that. And we saw some things at the end of the game, which I don't think we had ever seen before from any other coach. So this team knows how to win. Detroit does. I ran in. I think, Balky, we need to send a 911 flare up for everyone that is moving through week 14 in the FFPC, an incredibly important week with so much on the line for the players. In Kentucky, less on the line because it's going to be somewhat forgiving, because our playoff has already started and we'll run 1 week longer. So let's avoid overthinking. I talked a guy into starting Jared Goff last night. He didn't want to start Jared Goff. And he came up with all the reasons, which, I patiently listened to and said, well, you've got to start Jared Goff. I think his alternative play might have been Russell Wilson. I would
have leaned towards Goff there as well.
He also wanted to discuss when Trevor Lawrence would be back and if he should acquire the Raider quarterback. This is too much overthinking.
Yeah.
You drafted Jared Goff for a reason, to play him at home. And especially with the Packers that were missing on defense. It was a glorious game. We're in store for some fantastic matchups in football down the road of the rest of the season, and it's so enjoyable to have meaningful games that you're playing in December in fantasy football, to have a shot to move up the leaderboards and win a prize. And you don't have to overthink it. After this weekend, there's no more buys. Is that correct, Balky?
Yeah, this is the last week of buys. We had 6 teams on bye in week 12, none in week 13, and then 6 again in week 14, and that's it. Then you don't have to worry about it.
There's no more buys. There are injuries. Don't complain about them because everybody else has experienced them, and you should have built a roster to take advantage of them. And it's just, you're going to be okay, and you're going to have a good time, and just quit overthinking and put your best players out there.
I think that is a temptation for a lot of people and I fought against this too for years, where I would go through a much more rigorous process of starting and sitting and roster management as it gets to the end of the season. And, roster management aside, I guess with the start sit thing, I don't, the way I made up my mind on who I bench and who I start every week, that got me to this point. So I don't want to overthink it or really, take a different approach for the end of the season. Will I think a little bit longer? Sure. I just want to make sure I'm making the right thing, but I'm not. What do I always say, Ferrell? You think long, you think wrong.
And, you sure do.
Paralysis by analysis. It's never good.
I was guilty of that in week 12 in a matchup that would have really worked out for me in the FFPC. And the player I started, I could have started any other of the 4 players I had on the bench and won the matchup. So it's just a situation sometimes to go with what you know. And we've got a lot of talent in the room. I trust all our players' initial thoughts and reactions. I trust those more than I trust them analyzing and trying to make a case for a player, because you don't have to do it now. You've got a full roster.
Bill Hollywood has a question for everyone. He wants us to rank these 4 running backs for this week and for the remainder of the season. Sincere McCormick, Patrick Taylor, Travis Homer, and then Davis. Who would the Davis be, Ferrell? Do you know?
I think that's Ferrell Davis, who's been talking about a comeback.
That's what I thought right away. Is Terrell Davis. I'm assuming that is, let's see if I can find it here. Ray Davis, probably for Buffalo.
Oh, of course.
That's probably what it is. It's either Ray Davis or Isaiah Davis for the Jets. Let's assume it's Ray. So I would rank
Hollywood. What have you gotten yourself into, my friend?
I mean, if I'm looking at this, I'll throw it back up there again. Ray Davis is number 1 for me. After that, I would probably say I would go Davis, Taylor, McCormick, and Travis Homer. The reason being, Ray Davis could be a potential, I know this term gets tossed around a lot, but he could be a potential league winner if James Cook misses any time. So you want to make sure you have him. Patrick Taylor is 1 injury away. I do believe he is going to be the guy behind Garendo over Israel Abanikanda right now. So I'd want to have him. Travis Homer, or Sincere McCormick has really come through the last couple of weeks for the Raiders. However, bear in mind, Amir Abdullah still in that backfield, and you have Madison questionable this week. So Madison might play, which kind of neuters him a little bit. And then Travis Homer, he could start this week, which is great against the Niners if Roshan Johnson is out and if DeAndre Swift is out. But if they come back, I mean, he's the number 3 running back for the Bears. So I just don't see a whole lot of upside there. So I would rank him Davis, Taylor, McCormick, and then Travis.
Who are the Bears playing this weekend?
San Francisco.
Are you sure about that? I thought it was Buffalo.
Hold on. No, I'm not sure.
Double check.
No, it's the Niners. It's in Santa Clara. Bears.
Chicago's going somewhere else.
Buffalo is the Rams, I think. Yeah, Buffalo is at the Rams.
Oh, okay. Well, I stand corrected. You got to figure out the games, Balk. Yes. That handy schedule that the FFPC gives out, I should be hanging on to that here in week 14.
Yeah, for sure.
So the player that's most reliable here is Davis. The player that's most interesting here is McCormick. McCormick, I really liked this player in college. You know, he's a smaller school player, but a second or third team All-American. I can't remember. I saw him play against Louisiana Tech. He scored 3 touchdowns. Louisiana Tech was no slouch that year. Tore his ACL very early in 2023. So, you know, this is a hungry player playing on a team that nothing has really worked, and they're looking for answers. But Davis is your easy start. It's here because he's got, as you well said, Balkman, the most potential upside. So I'm just basically repeating what you said. But keep an eye on what's happening with the Raiders. That might be when they start a player, that might be a potential player you could buy into if you need a high side.
Permar has a question here for us. I think this is really interesting. Jameis Winston or Justin Herbert? Winston in a potential shootout environment at Pittsburgh this week, where they are 6.5-point dogs, so positive game script for Jameis Winston, or Justin Herbert, who has been, as Permar puts it, sluggish, and he is not going to have J.K. Dobbins available in that ground game. The Chargers really struggled to get anything going with that ground game without Dobbins last week. Chargers go to Arrowhead. They are 4-point underdogs. Total on the Steelers-Browns game is 43.5. Total on this Chargers-Chiefs game is 43. Ferrell, how do you stand in on this? Winston over Herbert or vice versa?
Well, it's hard to shoot the Jameis horse has won the race. Yeah, that last game at Atlanta, 147 yards. Paramore, it depends on what you think you need and if you've got any stacks and those kind of things. That Pittsburgh defense is awful stout. It's not going to look like it did last time Jameis was out. That's one of the tougher questions that we're going to have. If you feel that you have explosive lineup at the other 9 positions and really want to count on a 20-point game moving you up in your playoff, in your league, I'm going to go Herbert. If you have issues with so many players that are on bye, if you don't have Henry, and if you don't have Permar seems like his Indianapolis Colts. They probably got a guy from there. Whoever you don't have, Permar, if you're liked and need big numbers, go ahead with Jameis.
I think it'd be more fun to start Winston. I think if I was playing in the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship and I was chasing, needing to move up the leaderboard, I'd be more inclined to play Winston because I do think his ceiling's a little bit higher. You know what's funny is
go ahead, Buck.
I thought last week that Winston was going to have big problems moving the ball against that Broncos defense. He did it, 497 yards. I didn't think there was going to be any issue with Justin Herbert having a good game against the Falcons. Only 147 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, 1 rushing yard. So it's not great.
How many picks Jameis at Denver? How many picks do you have?
He had 3.
Okay. How many picks Herbert had all year? 1.
That's true. Yeah. And by the way, his 1 pick is think about the great teams that the Chargers have played this year. The Steelers, the Chiefs, the Broncos defense, the Ravens. That 1 pick came in against the Carolina Panthers, of course, because of course. I guess I would lean towards Herbert here, but I would also say if Permar, if you have a hunch, trust your gut and go with Winston, I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Last night we saw Goff throw 3 touchdowns, 2 of them on 4th down, maybe. Herbert hasn't thrown more than 2 in one game. Winston could throw 2 in 1 quarter. It's fascinating. Permar has stumped us, Balky.
He has stumped us. That was a good question.
Us. Go on the waiver wire, Permar, and pick up O'Connell. Yeah, get him in there.
Okay, let's see. I'm just catching up here. I want to make sure I did not miss anything. I don't think I did. But if you had a question in there and I am moving forward, my apologies. Just post it again. We'll get to it. Still, let's stick with this Chargers conversation. Ladd McConkey is dealing with a shoulder injury and a knee injury. My shoulder and my knee. He is questionable against the Chiefs for Week 14. 117 yards last week before he could not go any longer with that knee injury. Harbaugh didn't really say a whole lot about his availability, but he did get in 3 limited practices this week, which is good. I would think he's going to play, Ferrell. However, the problem with this, it's a Sunday night game. Obviously, it depends upon what your other options are. And if you can pivot in that Sunday night game, maybe you pick up, a guy like Josh Palmer off the waiver wire. Quentin Johnston's probably not available. You could go with a Jermaine Burton or a Andrei Yoshivas on Monday night, Brandon Cooks, Jalen Tolbert, just in case McConkey can't go. I think if you play it correctly, McConkey is worth waiting around for, and I do believe he is playing, but I want to leave myself an out just in case. Again, FFPC League Championship weekend. Can't screw this up.
Not at all. Wow. McConkey has been such a target magnet for this team, and he is such a key to make them go. The Chargers don't look anything like what I thought they would when the season started. And it's been a good combination of rush and pass, and we all thought it was going to be run heavy, and it has been run centered, but still we're looking at a quarterback that's thrown for about 2,500 yards here. So, and 5 games to go. So, I don't know, Balky. I hate waiting to hear what McConkey is going to do. And these we think he's going to play. We think he's going to play. Oh, he doesn't play. But he's proven that he's been effective when he has been on the field. So once again, we can look at the training staff of the Chargers and say, hey, they must know how to get guys ready to get on the field. So let's just this is one that you need to overthink. But again, if you're hurt with your roster with X amount of players on bye, I guess you just take a snap at McConkey. I like what you came in with Cooks there, though. The Cooks has had a late season resurgence, hasn't he?
Yeah, and I don't know how much he factors into their plans in 2025. I think he's a free agent, and he obviously wants to keep his career going, so he's going to ball out as much as he can. Cooper Rush has shown that he's been capable, at least, of throwing the football downfield and getting some yardage. And Cooks could be a guy that again, like it might be an interesting pivot if you have to move off McConkey if he's inactive on Sunday night. Speaking of Cooks, his real-life teammate Jake Ferguson is back. He practiced in full on Friday, according to Ralph Acciano. Jake Ferguson is going to be playing, we think, we trust, we don't see any reason why he wouldn't, be playing for the Cowboys on Monday Night Football against Cincinnati. Ferrell, given the changes that have happened at quarterback, given the changes that, CeeDee Lamb's dealing with something right now, the offense is a little bit different. It looks a little bit different. Is Ferguson a guy that in a tight end premium league like the FFPC, you're just automatically starting him? Or should we have a little bit of trepidation of just like, whoa, let's just think about this and make sure Ferguson is the right play here this week? Again, coming off the 2 games that he missed with a concussion, I don't think it's just an auto start.
Oh, it is, Balky. Any thinking is overthinking in the case of this player. The natural tendency of this Dallas team to lean on that tight end is back. Ferguson, one of my favorite players in the league. Interestingly enough, his backup, Luke, which we may see a little bit of both of them. I really think both these tight ends will get points. My biggest concern about Ferguson is that that he won't have a big enough percentage of the snaps. I don't know if this offense is going to have both tight ends on the field very often. But all in all, I like both these tight ends, and I like Ferguson best. And if you drafted Ferguson, especially in our FFPC, you don't really have anybody that can touch him to play in front of him. Because Balky, has there been a late round breakthrough at tight end this year? I can't think of who it I can't think of who it was. When we had the tight end whisperer back in the pros versus shows, he brought on Hunter Henry as a player, and I tip of the cap to him. Hunter Henry's put together some nice games as of late. You've got to hear the whispers to know when to play Hunter Henry, but nevertheless, I can't think of. Is there anyone?
I got four of them.
Is Disley you're going to say Disley?
Disley's one of them.
Well, okay, fair enough. You're going to say Jonnu Smith, and we knew that.
Yep. Okay. We didn't know that, though, because he wasn't being drafted that high.
Well, true. We knew if Jonnu was given the job, he could deliver, I guess.
And he's delivering.
You're not going to say Gesicki.
No, not Gesicki.
What are you going to say?
Tucker Kraft, right in Green Bay.
No, wait a minute. No, Tucker Kraft wasn't a late pick.
Oh, you would be surprised, Farrell. I'm going to look it up right now.
Please.
Bear in mind that the Packers had a guy, and they still have a guy, but he's been on IR. Named Luke Musgrave, who a lot of people were drafting here. And I know there was plenty of people that looked at Tucker Kraft as the better guy anyway when they were drafted.
You were one of them.
No, I wasn't. I was
a big Musgrave fan.
I was a big Musgrave guy. Tucker Kraft, again, I'm looking at the ADP from Fantasy Mojo, fantasymojo.com, Darren Armani at Fantasy Mojo.
That's our guy.
Tucker Kraft went off the board as tight end 31 at the 17-10 in the FFPC Main Event. Yes, that's where he was being drafted. Actually,
I wish I had a time machine.
Right. But after Mike Gesicki, actually, Gesicki was tight end 30, and Kraft was tight end 31. Now,
thinking, Balky.
So those were three of the four. Disley, Tucker Kraft, Jonnu Smith, and then the fourth guy I'll give you. Now he's fallen off a little bit since Mike Evans came back, but Cade Otton is a guy that was right up there, and he was a guy that was an afterthought in drafts too. He was drafted as I take that back. Tight end 21 at the 1408. So late 14th round pick. We're picking at nits a little bit here, but he wasn't as big of a get as Tucker Kraft was. Go ahead.
This was back when all the boys were in the pros versus Joes were referring to him as Cade Rotten. They're not doing that now, are they?
Cade Rotten. I forgot about that.
Remember that guy is talking about Cade Rotten. Makes you want to adjust your strategy next year and take strictly tight ends for rounds 13 through 17.
I often don't do emails this early in the show, but I'm going to do an email from Gary in Maple Shade, New Jersey, because it's the exact same question that Tom Smith has just asked us in the chat room right now. Caleb Williams, possibly without DeAndre Swift and DJ Moore, or Brock Purdy, who obviously is going to be going without Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey. They are playing against each other, Ferrell. Who would you rather play this week between those two?
Let's go play some Caleb Williams.
Caleb Williams?
Let's go ahead. Yeah.
I do like him, and I want to get your opinion sort of on Thomas Brown, who, when he took over for Shane Waldron, Williams' numbers and his efficiency have both gone up. Now Brown is the head guy in charge of the Bears. What do you make of that coaching change for the Bears? I think this is an improvement for not only Caleb Williams, but the rest of the team as well.
It's a shakeup. Midseason shakeup gets everyone's attention. Even a player like Williams, so the rookie, with the red carpet rolled out for him, it gets everyone's attention as a reset, and it can be good for the team. It's equivalent to the old dead cat bounce. But I think Purdy, things are not going well for the Niners. They got to have this game. I think they've got a running back to handle it. I love what they have at the receivers. I like the Niners for the game, so I believe it's going to be a little chaser position for the Bears. It's a toss-up, but I could see Williams with 5 more points, fantasy points.
I'm gonna roll him with Williams, even though normally in this situation I take the home quarterback, but I think there is a little bit more upside for Williams than Purdy this week, and I'm going to go with that. If I was to look at the total and spread on this game, I'm seeing the Niners as a 3.5 point favorite with a total of 44 in that game. Permar has another question here. I think this is interesting, and this one I'm more sure about and how I feel. He wants to know, with George Pickens' new hamstring injury, would you drop Devon Vele for Calvin Austin? And for me, the answer is yes, I would, because I do see potential for wide receiver one numbers, not fantasy wide receiver number one, but where the Steelers might feature Calvin Austin a little bit more, who's been making plays when he's been the number two, whereas Vele significantly behind Cortland Sutton, still making plays. I just think there's more upside with Calvin Austin. I want to get me the guy with the ceiling. So, yeah.
I do, too. They look like they want to get the ball to Austin, and Vele's been a favorite of Permar. Permar, get yourself out to Planet Hollywood 2025, and let's go ahead and draft Vele there.
Yeah.
Until then, let's play Austin.
But Bill Hollywood also saying Austin has more upside, so that's what we're.
Bill Hollywood knows. Bill Hollywood knows a lot of stuff. Bill Hollywood better get himself together and come register for Super Sunday weekend.
That's right. Absolutely.
That's
We were just talking about tight ends with Jake Ferguson. Let's stay in that same division and talk about the Eagles. Dallas Goedert has been ruled out with a knee injury for this Panthers game. Yes, he is out again. And by the way, this could be a multi-week injury for Goddard here. Adam Schefter reporting this. And if that is the case, what do you make of Grant Calcaterra as a player that you'd want to roster? Maybe, I don't know if you want to roster him if you didn't have Goddard, but as a player, again, when you're trying to find these players that are not locked because they've already been dropped, Calcaterra might be out there, Ferrell. Is he a wise use of one of your roster spots in the FFPC going forward here for the remainder of the season?
Probably so. He's an active move tight end. He's got a little fight in him. He'll throw a block and chip. He'll go over the middle. I watched him catch a ball, hold on to the ball with a tough hit from the safety, and get up and signal for the first down, run back to the huddle. He's a perfect player for Philadelphia Eagles. A young player playing with a lot of grit. Why not?
Kenneth Walker III is questionable for the game against the Cardinals this week, which is really frustrating. Bob Condata has this report, limited in Wednesday's practice, and then he gets downgraded to DNP on both Thursday and today's practice. This is a 4:05 start, Seattle and Arizona this week. This is really confusing, Ferrell, because the result of whether Walker is active or inactive is not only going to change how you handle him on your team, but think about the Charbonnet owners. How do they treat this? Where, Charbonnet could be a really good start this week, or he might just be a total whiff. If you had either one of these players on your roster, if you had a Walker team, if you had a Charbonnet team, how are you handling this? Are you treating it as if Walker is going to be out or that he's going to be in?
Well, did not practice today is pretty much evident of what's going to happen. So
you're treating Walker. Okay. All right.
Yeah, Charbonnet is likely to be your guy.
How high? I mean, is he a top 20 guy this week, Charbonnet? Is he higher than that? Is he a top 15 guy?
He's done it before, and that's what you have to like about him. I see a big disconnect between the talent of the two players. Both fantasy players don't. That's why I've grown so much, because Walker is a player that I want to see healthy. Well, I've always thought Walker, with the season that he deserves, could be be a second-round running back in the FFPC. I think the player has a lot of appeal to me. Maybe he stays under the radar with this injury, and we get to Las Vegas next year, and we pick up Walker at a deflated value price.
Yeah.
Maybe he's the 2025 Josh Jacobs. But remember why, if he doesn't play now and if he's hampered for the rest of the way, our drafters will need to remember why he didn't finish the season well. But, yeah, Charbonnet, good player.
It is the portion of the program right now where we get to bring in this lovely piece of this lovely tchotchke here.
Oh, that's good stuff.
On the Raiders chain. John Terry, courtesy of John Terry, our mutual friend. He was on the show on Tuesday, the road of his high stakes lowdown. He got his first look at this on the show, and he said he thought it was awesome. So we're going to get into the Raiders portion here. Okay. Ferrell, we touched on this a little bit earlier. Alexander Mattison is questionable for Week 14 against Tampa. Zamir White did not practice today. I think we can just kind of rule him out completely.
What a wasted year.
It was, yeah.
Tough year.
And then Madison practiced all 3 days this week. So what are we doing with it? Is Sincere McCormick still a play, or do we start untruthful Madison? Don't forget about Falsitude Abdullah, who is also a Raider. I don't know what we do when I have this many questions about a backfield, Ferrell. Maybe it's just best to kind of leave it alone for week 14 because I don't know what to do here.
You probably can't. That's your problem. You probably can't. We got to give the listeners a player to play. Let's play Madison. Madison's practiced. Let's play it. If Madison hasn't practiced, let's play McCormick. I love McCormick, but he's got to be on the field to get the snaps. Chances are, if the team is successful, the Raiders are going to be successful this weekend. They're going to go with a mixed bag of all these players, and you don't have a high ceiling with any of them. But, there's some teams that don't have enough running backs to fill up the spots. And, so you can guarantee one thing, that your Madison and your McCormick, neither of them are going to get a 0.
Yeah, that's true. And I think Abdullah is probably in that neighborhood too, where I don't think he gets a 0, but I don't think he gets 10 either. I
haven't really seen anyone start Abdullah. Have you?
I did. Now you're not. Listen, you're going to say, well, Balky, the Scott Fish Bowl doesn't count, but I did.
No, it doesn't.
Exactly. It's the only league I've started him in. But yeah, I've seen people roster him, but I haven't gone against them or seen him in anybody's lineups. That is the Raiders. A more compelling running back situation is developing in Tampa. Bucky Irving with a hip injury and a back injury, officially questionable to play against those Las Vegas Raiders. Greg Allman with the report here. Limited practice for Irving today. He did not practice at all on Wednesday or Thursday. I am not sure what to do here. And if Bucky Irving is active, I think you have to play him, Ferrell. But I also will allow for the possibility that it might be a reduced workload. And maybe we see more Sean Tucker this week. Maybe we see more Rashad White. Or as Dan Williamson refers to these running backs, Bucky, Tucky, and Sucky for Rashad White. And I think that all 3 of these guys could give you fits if you start any of them. But against the Raiders, one of them could come through for you big time.
I still am a White fan. I really like Rashad White, but Bucky Irving is a fantastic running back to watch. It's only going to get better. He's very explosive. He's learning things about how to play the NFL game week to week. He's progressively better, which is what you want to look at on film. He really sticks out. You're exactly right. That's the player that you want to go with. It's the player you want to go with if he's healthy. And once again, we could be lied to again by we could have been. The Tampa training room is the biggest trainers, the busiest trainers in football are in Tampa. Let's just put it that way.
So it's Irving. Obviously, you and I are in agreement.
Right.
If Irving misses this game, would you feel okay starting Rashad White, knowing that?
That's why Led was saying I really like White.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you're still,
and he needs a bounce back game.
And Tucker is out of the equation for starting in week 14.
Yeah, right? I think so. Okay. I think so. Tucker to me is the Gainwell of the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Yeah, I can see that. It's almost as if Permar has our show sheet in front of him tonight because he leads.
We got a show sheet.
We do. I sent it over. Yeah, I didn't.
With my contract.
Don't worry about it because I threw a lot of stuff on there and we're not even gonna be able to cover all of it. So it doesn't make a difference. Kendra Miller is questionable for week 14 against the Giants. Has not been removed off of injured reserve, but he did get in 3 full practices this week. Ferrell, I don't know if you have any inside baseball information of what happened between him and Dennis Allen in New Orleans, but Darren Rizzi says that he doesn't have a doghouse. Thus, Kendra Miller can't be in the doghouse.
I like
that. So it could be Kendra Miller time. Not starting, obviously. It's Kamara, but you want to have this guy on your roster. Kind of interested to see what he does the rest of the season, and knowing that running back has a 100% injury rate. At some point, he might get a couple of starts here. Maybe one of those starts happens in week 17. I think you got to keep this guy around.
We have talked more about I don't think we've ever talked more about a player who's done less than and I wondered all year while we were talking about it, and I still wonder, and if he has value at the end of the season, so be it. I think if we're over dreaming on hopium, we're beyond overthinking with Kendra Miller.
And at that point, I mean, like, listen, it's a long shot, right? For him to pay off in redraft leagues this year, probably won't happen. And if it does happen, it might only be for 1 week.
So impossible to 1 are the odds that I'm putting on this.
There you go. Dalton Kincaid, one of the letdown tight ends of the year. A lot of letdown tight ends this year. Dalton Kincaid is questionable this week against the Rams. Catherine Fitzgerald reported that Kincaid is a player that, and there are reports going around that if he is active, you may not see a full complement of snaps. You could see Dawson Knox out there more. What is interesting to me about this is I know how talented he is. I know how good the Bills' offense is, and I know the total on this game is teetering right at 50 points. It's really, really difficult for me, and I know Kincaid's missed some time, really, really difficult for me to sit him this week. I'm not thinking long about this. I'm putting him in my lineup. How do you feel about that?
What has happened to this player, Balkman? There was just so much promise for what he was going to be offensively. Why is he having the kind of year he's had?
You know, what's frustrating too, and you bring that up, they did not have Stephon Diggs this year at all. They've only had Amari Cooper for a handful of weeks. Keon Coleman never really took off, and there's still time, whatever. Curtis Samuel has not done anything. Khalil Shakir's been okay. This Bills team is really, really good, and they don't have that alpha number 1 receiver. We saw what Kincaid did down the stretch. It's just natural to think, if you look at the Bills' record and you don't look at who's catching passes, you would have just assumed that Kincaid is like a top 3 tight end this year. He's not close to top 3. He's been bad this year, Ferrell. He's had 1 game of 6 or more catches. He has had 1 game of 5 catches, a handful of 4, but a lot of 3s, a lot of 2s. He has had a 1-catch game against Arizona that really set the tone in week 1 for him. He's coming off a 2 for 24 performance in week 10. He has not played since then. He is coming back week 14 against the Rams. I'm huffing on hopium here for Dalton Kincaid. I don't know, man. I can't come up with a good case of why this guy isn't more productive.
If he's recovered from injury, if the offensive coordinator is going to work with him, if he and the quarterback have chemistry, there's no reason you shouldn't be starting him. But my goodness, that's a hell of a confusing seasonal resume for him, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
You should have got Zach Ertz, buddy. If you have Zach Ertz, everything's all right.
You know what's funny is think about the teams that drafted Kincaid and then just drafted one of these guys as just a backup for Tucker Kraft or Jonnu Smith, and all these guys are playing ahead of him right now. It's funny how that works. Tom Smith pointing out there's going to be a big change with tight ends in the first few rounds next year, and I'm with you. There definitely is. There will not be this impetus to try to get. At least I'm not in KFFSC. I'm not going to be bending over backwards to try to get one of these elite tight ends early when I see what has happened with several tight ends this year drafted much later. Bill Hollywood, just out of nowhere. Is Kareem Hunt finished? Kareem Hunt catching a stray here. He's not finished, but I would not have the expectations I had for him when Pacheco was out. Pacheco's back, and it's not like Hunt was crushing it when he had the lion's share of the touches there. So keep him around. This may be his last year of fantasy relevance, but I still think there's something there. Anytime you're the backup behind Isaiah Pacheco, you're probably going to get some playing time at some point.
You're going to get some playing time in this offense, and perhaps what Hunt is done, but I'm not dropping him.
That's what I'm trying to say.
That makes sense. It's like I'm going to say something, but maybe not mean it. So, Permar gets a lot of those in there, but
I totally know what he means. That's how I feel. Like I
thought Kareem Hunt was a wonderful addition to that team. I thought he played on an offense that needed him while the Pacheco was down. I thought he played very, very well and started some fantasy games for me, which I was pleased to get the point. So I don't think he's done. I think he'll have a role the rest of the way. He's not playable, but Pacheco will be. And that's about the story.
Let's go to some emails here that came in. A lot of starts or sits for these, I'm assuming, FFPC players here. Julian in Santa Clara kicks it off. Darnell Mooney or Khalil Shakir. Those are his options that he can only play one of them. We talked about Shakir a little bit when we got into the Kincaid discussion. I do like him. I know it's on the road against the Rams, but he's kind of been their number one wide receiver. Is Cooper going to play? I mean, I think so, but I trust Shakir more. It just seems like he's had the higher floor this year. And then Mooney, another guy who's coming out of nowhere this season that has really, really been good. However, his quarterback is coming off a 4-interception game, I want to say, and they just could not get anything going. It is a revenge game for Kirk Cousins as the Falcons go to Minnesota to take on Brian Flores' defense this week. So when it comes down to it, Mooney or Shakir kind of depends on what you need. I think Mooney has the higher ceiling, but I think I'm going to go with the floor guy here and go with Shakir.
That's why you're great at this business, Balky, because you broke it down. And I think the only thing I would disagree about what you said is I think Shakir has the higher ceiling. Oh, based on that group of things that you mentioned that were going wrong in Buffalo. And then, Cousins had 4 interceptions only because the Chargers last week couldn't even catch those balls. I mean, it was bad. It was just, I'm saying this is the easiest one of the night. Shakir's the guy. Mooney is talented. He gets open, gets separation. Cousins find him, but Cousins looks out of sorts and mechanically insufficient to play NFL quarterback right now.
Yes or no? Does Michael Penix make any starts this year for the Falcons?
Hard to believe he wouldn't.
So it's yes. Okay, interesting. Wes in Bainbridge, New York, continues with another wide receiver question. Elijah Moore or Nick Westbrook-Akini? I always, what's the old Saturday Night Live thing when Daryl Hammond was doing Tim Russert from Meet the Press, and he had Anna Gasteyer playing Hillary Clinton, and he would ask her a question, and he'd always go, Hillary Rodham Clinton, and she said, "You say my name like I was naughty at school," and that's how I'm doing it. Westbrook-Akini. This guy, Ferrell, I've reaped the benefits of him the last couple of weeks, where I've started him in a couple of Kentucky leagues where he's scored, and I know it's not sticky, and yet, with apologies to Chris Carter, all this guy does is catch touchdowns. That's all he does. Every single week, he's got 9 of them on the season. Now, Elijah Moore is the other one here at Pittsburgh. We kind of broke down what we think Jameis Winston is going to do against that Steelers offense. I think the matchup would say that it's Westbrook-Akini as he gets the Jaguars at home. I'm playing him again. I'm riding this train until it stops. Now, it might crash. It might just fall off the train tracks, which I realize is a possibility here. But I'm going with NWI here with him over Elijah Moore.
I'm 100% with you, Balky. And when you looked at Tennessee previously, even last year, you see this player and you say, man, that player is going to finally be given a chance. Well, he is now. His receptions are small, his touchdowns are long. But what's beginning to tick up is the number of targets. And eventually, when this quarterback and he get on the same page, and when the quarterback finds himself before the season is over, Westbrook-Akini could have some really interesting breakthrough games. So I think you're in the right place there, my friend.
Yeah, it's Westbrook-Akini for sure. Will Dissly or Jawan Johnson is the next one. That is Logan in Macon, Georgia. He has to figure this out. Will Dissly, again, Sunday Night Football. No, it's not Sunday Night Football. Excuse me. That's the Chiefs game. He is in Arrowhead this week. Jawan Johnson is going to be at New York this week at the Giants. And Jawan Johnson's missed some time.
Yeah.
He came back last. Oh, no, he has not missed time. I take that back. He had probably his best game of the season this past week against the Rams. 7 targets. He catches 5 of them for 36 yards. You like that in the FFPC. Normally I'd say it's Dissly, no question, with how he's been crushing it. But then for whatever reason, he puts up a bagel last week. So now it's Juwan Johnson there's the conversation. I still think it's Dissly, but man, I don't know.
There's no way to answer this question. I have a soft spot for Dissly because on one of my teams, he was the first time I got a tight end touchdown this year. Oh. But you know, you take away the quarterback, tight end, whatever he is, Hill out of the New Orleans offense, and you think, well, that's why Johnson gets targets, and he has. I like Johnson in the red zone as well. There's another tight end on the roster down there in New Orleans. It looks like he's getting some snaps. This is such a toss-up. You've got to make the decision based on other reasons. Balky, you do a good job giving us the totals in these games. What do you see in the totals in these two?
You talking about Foster Moreau as the other tight end?
No, I'm talking about Taysom Hill.
Oh, well, he's out for the year, though.
That's what I'm saying. He's gone.
Oh, got it.
That's why we're getting.
Yeah, okay.
And, you know, I like Foster Moreau, but no, there seems to be another guy in the mix, too.
Right.
I mean, it's this team loves tight ends, but no, I'm saying that's why we finally see Johnson getting 7 targets and 5 catches.
The total on that Saints game, Saints are 5-point favorites. It's a total of only 41 on that game, so that is a low total there. The Chargers one, I think it was 43. Did I say before? Yeah, 43. Chiefs are 4-point favorites in that game. So
that's similar.
Very similar. Very, very similar. Let's go to who's up next here on the show. Lance in Arlington Heights, Illinois. Hey guys, Mike Gesicki or Chig Okonkwo? Mike Gesicki this week is in Dallas on Monday Night Football under the lights there. Chig Okonkwo, again, a really good matchup for him as the Titans host the Jacksonville Jaguars this week. I do like the matchup here. I think everybody's healthy in Cincinnati with Chase and Higgins and everything. So I'm going to lean towards Okonkwo here with a better matchup.
Okonkwo has come to life recently, but I'm going to go with Gesicki. I like the fact that those other targets are back. Dallas has a hard time covering some, so they'll have a hard time. They can't really account for Gesicki. I think he and Burrow have a nice thing going. I think do we have any 20-point games for Gesicki this year? Because we sure don't have them for Okonkwo.
Yeah, Gesicki had and this FFPC scoring obviously.
Well, that's the only kind we like.
Right. So he had week 2, 7 catches for 91 yards. Week 8, 7 for 73. Week 9, 5 for 100 and 2 touchdowns. Ironically, that was against the Raiders, is who it is best game against. That's his only game where he scored a touchdown this year. He's gotten no other touchdowns, but he got 2 against the Raiders in that game. He's coming off a 5 for 53 game. All right. Maybe it is. Maybe it is Gesicki here over Okonkwo. The thing is with Okonkwo too, Ferrell, he does not get the usage that Gesicki gets. His best game of the year came in week 12. He got 1 target that game. However, that target was a 70-yard touchdown catch.
Yeah, it's just not for me.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think it is. I'm going to take it back. I think it is Gesicki over Okonkwo. I'm seeing more volume there. More volume means more upside usually, and in this case, it does. Gary in Maple Shade, New Jersey. What's up, fellas? Brock. Oh, we already did Brock Purdy or Caleb Williams when Tom asked that before. So we'll move on to Jared in Caldwell, Idaho. Hey, HSFF hour, Will Levis or Jameis Winston? This will be a fun one. This is a fun one. Obviously, 6 teams on bye this week. You don't have Jaden Daniels, no Lamar Jackson, no Bo Nix. He's on bye as well. So if you have the opportunity, is Jameis Winston the start at Pittsburgh over one Will Levis, who again has, I think Josh Larkey said this on the Dominator podcast. I think that the Jaguars are the best matchup for quarterbacks this year. They're giving up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks. I see a similar upside with Levis as I do with Winston, so I'm going to play Levis.
Wow. Here, I'm tempted to play Winston because I think Winston has figured out who he is and what his role is with the team. I don't know if the Tennessee quarterback knows that. And I'm thinking that I think I'm going to go with Winston here.
You're going to go with Winston. Okay. All right. I respect it. I mean, it's close for me. I just, if you look at, and I want to bring it up right now, just so I'm not talking out of my rear end here, but Will Levis recently.
Good. It's been good.
Yeah. I mean, only 212 yards this past week, but he did throw for 2 touchdowns. He had a 2-touchdown game the week before against Houston, 278 yards, 295 yards against the Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so, I mean, Winston could obviously put up like a 30 this week, and it wouldn't surprise me. But I think there's a little bit more safety.
30s are good.
30s are excellent. We'll take.
But 30. We're in a head-to-head matchup here, so we don't know. We don't know if our friend from Idaho. We don't know what he's doing. If he's in a head-to-head matchup in the FFPC, he's playing for a payday.
Right.
So you got to look at that roster. If you need 30 and a quarterback, go Winston. If you can win with 20, go Levis.
That I agree with your assumption there on what this guy needs. So Jared, give us some more feedback. Give us some more info on that. We can answer the question a little bit better. John in Grand Rapids, Travis Etienne or Isaiah Pacheco this week. So this is a guy that. I think when you draft these guys, you just assume you'd be starting both of them. And now that's not the case anymore. Pacheco obviously coming into a bit of a timeshare here. Travis Etienne, it's been bad for him this year.
He stayed in London, didn't he?
Travis Etienne never came back.
Did they leave him over there?
Yeah, they might have left him there.
Yeah.
That's entirely possible.
It seems like it.
Has not topped. So he got hurt in that Bears game. And then missed a couple of games. Since then, 24, 44, 27, and 46 yards rushing. He has not topped 12 yards receiving since week 5. So it's been bad with Etienne. I think he's more of like Bob Harris from Football Guys always says you got to divorce the name from the numbers here. And the numbers do not favor Travis Etienne. I think I'm going to go with Pacheco.
How many weeks has Pacheco been down until he played last week?
Pacheco missed a total. Do you want me to count the bye week?
It doesn't matter.
All right, well, I'll count it then. He has missed 10 weeks of football.
10 weeks.
Played the first 2 weeks and now came back in week 13.
10 weeks you stared at Pacheco. You played with 19 players, and you left him on the injured reserve on your roster. And you waited, and and here we are in week 14, and you're considering starting someone besides Pacheco. Start Pacheco. Quit overthinking. Start Pacheco.
Pacheco last week too in his return gets 7 carries for 44 yards. He also caught a pass for 5 yards. Again, limited action against the Raiders, but hopefully his volume goes up a little bit more this week.
If you looked at the way he ran with the authority. You just need to go look at him run, and then you're going to say, "Oh well, let's start Pacheco."
If there is one running back in the NFL that does not care about his body, it's Isaiah Pacheco, just with no regard for his own personal safety, which is good and bad that he runs that way. But I think it's Pacheco here.
He is built to distribute pain while moving. Yeah, he plays with the middle linebacker's mentality. Like, you want to tackle me, I'll just run over you.
Final one we have here, Ferrell. It is Al in Houston. Gus Edwards or Tyjae Spears. Gus Edwards probably going to be the lead. Yeah, he is going to be the lead running back because J.K. Dobbins is on IR. Tyjae Spears against the Jaguars. Edwards against the Chiefs. What's your feelings here? Which is the right guy to go with?
Well, Edwards. Yeah.
Edwards last week against the Falcons, 6 carries, 32 yards. He had 1 catch for 1 yard. He did not get into the end zone. Spears is coming off a game where, I didn't realize he was hardly utilized at all. Did he get hurt against Washington? I don't think he did. I think it was just
Pollard didn't, and that's what matters.
1 carry for 3 yards. Yeah,
that's big. Just writing it home about it, baby.
You can't. I mean, even in a good matchup,
Spears is running neck and neck with Kendra Miller of things we shouldn't even talk about.
All right. And with that, we will wrap up our conversation not only of Tyjae Spears and Kendra Miller, but the entire show tonight as well. Tom Smith says, good show tonight, fellas. See you both again next week, which, we're doing a show next week. I'll be announcing the guest for that shortly. Good luck going forward these next few weeks, and good luck to everybody out there in FFPC and KFFSC land that are gunning for massive grand prizes this week. Ferrell Elliott, KFFSC.com is where to sign up for the Super Sunday Leagues, which you need to be doing, and joining everybody in Caesars, Southern Indiana, to not only watch the Super Bowl, but draft some football teams with the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship.
Nobody's going to treat you as well on Super Bowl weekend as we are.
That facts right there. Ferrell, enjoy your weekend, man. Thank you so much for hanging out tonight.
Thank you, my friend.
That is Ferrell Elliott, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, and that will wrap up the tonight's proceedings here, ladies and gentlemen, on the show. I want to thank Ferrell Elliott, the FFPC, Rob, Bryce, and, of course, each and every one of you. We will return next Friday at 10 p.m. 16th place FFPC main event regular season finisher Ron Ibarra is going to join us and talk about his march through the championship round. That will be fun. That's next Friday at 10. Watch this past week's RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. I alluded to it earlier. John Terry, the 25th place regular season finisher in the Fantasy Pros Championship. He and I chopped it up. We got the Raiders chain on the show as well. That was a lot of fun. On Tuesday, you can go back and watch that on the YouTube FFPC socials as well. RotoViz Lowdown returns this coming Tuesday at 10 p.m. The main event, 20th place finisher in the FFPC, Mark Davidson, is going to join us as well as he plots his way to $1 million grand prize in the FFPC main event. In case you missed last night's RotoViz High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network, I chopped it up with Pat Fitzmaurice from Fantasy Pros. That was a lot of fun leading into that Packers-Lions game. You can watch that back at your leisure on any of the BSN socials or FFPC socials. We will be back next Thursday at 7 p.m. with Corbin Young from Rotoballer taking us into that Thursday night football game as well. Play the FFPC Weekly Challenge. No draft, no salary cap. Just choose the 10 or 12 players that you want. If you want to play with kickers and defenses or without, that's up to you. And watch them ride through this weekend's games. Enter for as little as $35. Win up to $2,500. 10, 30, and 100 team formats. Play whatever you want. Play them all. Go to myffpc.com. That's myffpc.com. And you can get registered and play with the lineups locking at 1 p.m. on Sunday. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live, which will be Tuesday night on the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown with myself and Mark Davidson. For Ferrell Elliott, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour on the FFPC YouTube network. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
One final reminder, too, when you are signing up for that weekly challenge, make sure that you are getting all your roster set for the remainder of the season with the waiver wire locking in the FFPC at 10 a.m. this Sunday morning. Don't be caught with only one quarterback or one tight end or one kicker. Kicker is a little bit debatable. There's definitely some schools of thought on that, whether you should be carrying two or not. But just make sure that you get your roster set, knowing that you won't be able to make any more changes on it after this week. Thank you so much. Good luck to all of you battling for an FFPC main event or Fantasy Pros Championship League title this week. And we will talk with you again next Friday on this show, next Tuesday on the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. Be good, everybody.